Hi guys, so here's the last bit of our notes for this lesson 3. So here is another word problem we're going to go over. So it says, you have made a rectangular quilt as 5 feet by 4 feet. You want to use the remaining 10 square feet of fabric to add a decorative border of uniform width to the quilt. What should be the width of the quilt's border be? So the nice part is they have given you basically the picture. So we're going to use that to help us here. So let's talk about what we need to use. So we have basically the whole thing is the area of the quilt. Or the area of our border here, because that's what we're talking about, right? The border. Now, there are going to be two things that, like, if we combine, remember combine can be adding or subtracting, that will give us the area of the border. So you have the quilt, but then you also have basically the border itself, okay? So here we want the area of the quilt and the border. So that's the entire thing. So we're basically trying to find, okay, what is the area of the dashed red, right? So to find the area of this dashed red, we need to take the total minus what we know in the middle. That's just the area of the quilt. Now, how do we know we want to find the area of the border? Because it says, what should the width of the quilt's border be? So that's the whole main idea. Okay, so this is what we're trying to solve for here, right? We're trying to figure out this width here. So the area of the border, we got to figure out what that is. Well, they do tell us that you want to use the remaining 10 square feet of fabric to add a decorative border. And it's of uniform width, right? So uniform means the same. So the area of our border is 10. Now, the area of the quilt in the border. So the nice part is they have actually already done that for you. So area of our quilt, remember to find area, especially of a square or a rectangle, is our length times our width. So one part is going to be the 4 plus 2x. Now, you may be wondering, well, how did they get 4? Well, remember that basically the area of the rectangular quilt is just 5 feet by 4 feet. So 4 by 5 is actually the area of the quilt. Now, how did they get the 2x? Now, remember, the border, we're adding x on both sides. So we add x to the bottom, we're adding x here. And remember, we know both of these are x's because it's uniform width. So it's the same width all around. So now I do the other part, so 5 plus 2x. And then our area of the quilt. So they said we made a rectangular quilt that's 5 by 4. We multiply these two numbers to get our area, so that'll be 20. Now, what we're going to do next, I'm going to write that 5 times 4 so you guys know that. We got to multiply everything out. We need to get this into standard form. So I'm going to multiply this part. So we got 10 equals, we do 4 times 5 to give us 20, 4 times 2x to give us 8x, then 2x times 5 to give us 10x, and 2x times 2x gives us 4x squared, and we go ahead and multiply this minus 20. So notice our minus 20 and positive 20, they cancel. We combine our like terms in the middle. So now we have 10 equals, I'm going to rewrite this so it's in that more of that standard form. Remember, ax squared comes first. We have plus 18x. Now, what we've been working on is how to solve these equations by factoring, right? So let's go back to our steps. Remember, in order to solve by factoring, we got to set our equation equal to 0. So I need to move my 10 over, so my equation is equal to 0. So I have 0 equals 4x squared plus 18x minus 10. Now, I need to factor. My first question I need to ask myself, is there a greatest common factor? There actually is. 4, 18, and 10, they all have a 2 in common. So I'm going to factor that out. And when I do that, I need to rewrite my equation here. So each term I divide by 2. So I get 2x squared plus 9x minus 5. Now I go and factor what is inside the parentheses. So 5, the only numbers that multiply are 1 and 5. Same thing kind of with the 2. It's just 1 and 2. So I have 0 equals 2. I need to make 2 sets of parentheses. So here, because I only have one set that multiplies to 2, I gotta have x into x. Now 1 and 5, I have to use that. But I just have to think, well, which way am I gonna put this? Well, my 5, I'm gonna put it here, and my 1 here. Let's talk about why. Well, if I multiply the inner, this gives me 10x. If I multiply the outer, that gives me x. I'm trying to add to a 9. Well, in order to do that, and I want a positive 9, I got to do 10x minus x. So since I have this minus x, remember, only the sign is going to go in between these terms. I'm going to have a minus here. I'm going to have a plus right here to get that positive 10. Okay, now, once I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and set my 2 sets of parentheses equal to each other. Actually, I'm going to leave this for here just in case you guys need to keep that down on your notes. There we go. Now, I'm going to set each set of parentheses equal to 0. So my x plus 5 and my 2x minus 1. Now, remember, I don't set 2 equal to 0 because 2 cannot equal 0. That doesn't make sense. Okay, now I solve, so I get x equals negative 5, and I get x equals, well, let me do this step by step. I add 2x, or sorry, I add 1 to the other side and divide by 2, so I get x equals 1/2. Now, this is a real world problem, so we have to think, okay, which answer makes sense? So we're trying to find this width here. Would it make sense to have negative width? No. It would make sense to have positive width. So we have 1/2. Now, we do need to make sure we talk about what does this 1/2 mean, okay? Because we got to put a label with it. So what this means is basically the width of the quilt's border, so that's what we want, the width of the quilt's border, since we have a half, can mean a 1/2 foot, so a 1/2 foot, or 6 inches, right? Because 1/2 a foot is 6 inches, so you can write either. So we want the width of the quilt's border to be either 1/2 foot, 6 inch. So that would be our answer. Okay, that is the end. So make sure on this, I'm going to kind of start from here. If you need to pause to make sure you write down stuff, make sure you do that. So here, pause this if you need to get any of this information down. And then pause right here if you need to get any of this information down. Okay, so make sure you work on the homework, and if you have any questions, just let me know.